You might remember that we actually did a show last summer about specifically about Columbus, Ohio. We just found
because I could.
There were so many stories just about Columbus, Ohio that we felt well, maybe not obligated, but we wanted to give it its own show.
There was a lot.
There
was a lot. I had enough for Cleveland too.
It earned its own show, and honestly, there's not much. I don't know if was there anything about Cleveland in this episode. I think we might have skipped Cleveland in this episode. Yeah. Well, and in any case, we might come back and do a haunted Cleveland at some point. So, but yeah. So anyway, if you want stories about Columbus, you can go back, check out that episode from last summer. But we are turning tonight our attention back to the Buckeye State to cast a wider net across the state's haunted heritage. Now, it was an early post-revolutionary addition to the United States, and Ohio joined the Union officially in 1803 and has been a national powerhouse ever since. It vies with Virginia for the title of Mother of Presidents for the 7 chief executives that have called Ohio home, and it also consistently ranks amongst the most industrious states in the country. And its natural and cultural resources have drawn a steady stream of people hungry for adventure and seeking their fortunes for many generations. With so many having called this land home, it's of little wonder that many of them have lingered on here in the afterlife. The cats are catting.
Yes, we are having moods.
So, we're going to first, though, turn our attention a little to the west of the city of Columbus. We're going to go out there along the historic National Road to find the Red Brick Tavern in the little town of Lafayette.
All right, so prequel to this, when I found this story, I also found a theory out there that was called the Lafayette theory. And that is places that Lafayette has visited or it's been named after has a lot of hauntings associated with it. So I'm going to have to dive down this rabbit hole. But I just thought it was really interesting that somebody has actually developed this theory.
And it won't be the last time you hear his name tonight.
No.
So, anyways, this little town of Lafayette to the west of Columbus. Now, this classic roadside inn and tavern was constructed of locally manufactured bricks between 1836 and 1837. It was a prominent stop along the National Road, the first improved highway of the United States. The main section of the tavern faced to the highway, and a narrower wing extended back along a side street, giving it an L shape. The first floor featured the dining room and kitchen, and the second floor was comprised of 12 rooms for overnight travelers. Another 4 private rooms were on the third floor. Over the years, the Red Brick Tavern was a popular place for travelers along the historic National Road, including U.S. Presidents John Quincy Adams, Martin Van Buren, William Henry Harrison, John Tyler, Zachary Taylor, and Warren Harding. So, maybe just has a little bit of prestige on that front. Now, however, the advent of the railroads meant that fewer people were traveling along the National Road, and as a result, the Red Brick Tavern closed in 1859.
You've been bubbled.
Stop it, Facebook. Stop it. So.
And again.
Red Brick Tavern closed in 1859 and was converted into residential housing. From 1854 to 1864, a school also occupied the third floor. It didn't reopen as a tavern until 1924. These days, it is a home to a restaurant where the signature dish is a steak dinner that is named after the presidents who have visited. And visitors can eat in the original dining room. The previous overnight rooms are now used for special events. It's gonna be a night. Hope y'all are having fun out there.
I'm just gonna keep losing it.
Okay. I might be on my own tonight. Anyways, these days it is home, so yes, the restaurant. In terms of the building's haunted aspect, there is said to be a female ghost in the upstairs area of the restaurant. It is believed that her name is Effa, and her story ended when she was betrayed by her husband and decided to take her own life. But how did she get to such a tragic and dramatic point? Effa's story started when the town of Lafayette was first settled by William and Mary Minter in 1829, along with their 9 children, including Effa. In 1831, a player by the name of Stanley Watson came sauntering into town and promptly caught the eye of Effa. Before long, the pair were married. Seeing an opportunity for the young couple's success, William gave the newlyweds a plot of land to build a stagecoach inn and tavern along the route of the forthcoming National Road. Coinciding with the completion of the area's portion of the National Road, the 1836 opening of the Red Brick Tavern seemed it would indeed set up the couple for a happy life. One thing that Effa's father didn't consider was the endless stream of ladies that would be crossing the threshold of the inn and their effects on Stanley.
Dun, dun, dun.
According to a mix of oral history and physical records, it was only 2 years after the Red Brick's grand opening that Effa became aware of her husband's philandering ways. In 1839, she added a touch of class to the standard suicide note when she embroidered the phrase, "Remember me," on a dark piece of cloth, then killed herself in the residential section of the inn's 3rd floor. Yes, part of her suicide letter was embroidery. So, yeah. That embroidered work is still on display today, and while Effa's method of suicide is lost to history, legend states that it is her blood that stains the cloth. Another strange thing was that after Effa's burial, townsfolk could still see her peering out the windows from the inn's 3rd floor. True to the sentiments conveyed in her needlework, she is occasionally seen in the windows to this day. Other means of communication that Effa uses include whispering in people's ears, turning lights on and off, and being heard walking through the building. One of the female bartenders shared a terrifying run-in that she had with Effa. It was just before closing when the bartender went to grab something from her car. She was walking back through the empty yard when the silence was broken by the sounds of a woman loudly sobbing directly behind her. An eerie feeling overtook the bartender, and with her hair standing on end, she ran into the safety of the tavern before turning back to look, but there was finding that there was absolutely nobody there. It seems that Effa may not be alone in calling the tavern their haunting home. When one staff member told her brother-in-law of the strange happenings at the tavern, he immediately came to visit. While he was there, he left a running audio recorder on the keys of a defunct organ that sits at the top of the 2nd floor stairs. After half an hour, he retrieved the recorder and was confounded by the sounds of ragtime piano that were captured on the device. It wasn't until a few days later that mysterious piano music had an explanation. The employee told an old-timer about the recording, and he conveyed the story of Ray, an elderly gentleman that played piano in the dining room for years. Since his passing, Ray has been seen throughout the 1st floor, and if you're lucky, you might hear his musical talents. So if you find yourself in Ohio looking for a classic piece of Americana, along with a tasty dinner and some spirits, take a drive on the historic National Road to the Brick House Tavern and immerse yourself in the ambiance of this historic haunt.
Yes, I agree with Patrick. When I first read this, the first thing that popped in my mind was Disney's Coco. I was like, yeah, that was murder, not suicide.
Yeah. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to move over to Pleasant Valley to the Malbar Farm, or known as the Seeley Rose House. Now, the Pleasant Valley region of Ohio is about halfway between Columbus and Cleveland, and it is a picturesque Malbar Farm State Park today. The centerpiece of the park is a historic home which harbors a ghostly secret more than a century old. Known as the Seeley Rose House, the mansion stands white against the forested hillside with green shutters and a large porch offering a beautiful view of the countryside across the Switzer Creek below. The house was home to the Rose family, David, who operated the mill on the property, his wife Rebecca, their son Walter, and their 23-year-old daughter Celie. According to the contemporary accounts, Celie was a degenerate and did not appear to know the difference between right and wrong. Again, those are direct quotes from the historic newspapers. This point was fatally driven home one day on June of 1896. The house was much smaller then, lacking the wraparound porch and the more modern amenities that would come in the decades to follow. In the simpler country home, 23-year-old Celie Rose poured rat poison into her family's supply of cottage cheese, begging the question, why? Well, it turns out that Celie was head over heels for the boy next door, Guy Barry. Unfortunately for Celie, at least unfortunately for her point of view, her parents firmly told her to forget about it. Celie's exact circumstances are uncertain, but she faced mental challenges that left her with the thinking ability of a child. Guy Barry, then 16, was only polite to her out of kindness. Celie didn't understand the nature of the situation and only thought her parents were trying to keep her from her one true love. Thus, her parents needed to go. The first floor of the house contained 3 small rooms in 1896, a room for Celie's mother's loom, a living area that contained a sofa, and the kitchen. Celie hid her poison in an outside spring house before one day taking it to the kitchen and pouring it into the cottage cheese. Her father died on the sofa the next day. Her brother lasted another week. Her mother recovered but realized what Celie had done. Since Celie was all that she had left, her mother helped her cover it up. Now, despite her crime, Celie's mother couldn't imagine parting with her last surviving family member. This was a grave error, as Celie wasn't done. Celie poured more arsenic into a jar of buttermilk in July of 1896, and like that, her mother was finally gone. The tasteless poison had done its job, but that's not to say that Celie had got what she wanted. In fact, Celie would never see Guy Barry again. She was arrested, confessed, and tried on 3 accounts of murder. She was ultimately found not guilty by reason of insanity and sent to the Toledo Asylum. In 1915, Celie transferred to the new Lima State Hospital for the criminally insane. She died there in 1934, the day after her 61st birthday. She's buried in the hospital graveyard, although many say her spirit haunts her old family home at Marlborough Farm State Park. The details vary significantly from story to story, but the case was made most famous by author Louis Broomfield in 1939, over 40 years after the murders. Broomfield purchased the home and surrounding property and created the estate, which he called Malabar. Now, one of his first tasks after moving in was to write a book about the murders tiled Pleasant Valley. Broomfield would invite his Hollywood friends to come visit his estate, and it said that Shirley Temple milked cows here while James Cagney sold produce at a farm stand, and Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall celebrated their wedding at Malabar. After Bromfield's passing, the estate changed hands a few times before being acquired by the state of Ohio in 1972 to preserve the history and the ecological value. While Celie Rose House is only open to the public during special events, visitors can view the modest farmhouse exterior at any time. Such restrictions don't apply to the presence that still lingers there, however. The presence that has transcended generations of the living who have come and gone over the last century. To this day, Celie is said to lurk around the house. Glimpses of a young woman who have been documented running through the house and seen at the windows. Ghostly voices conversing can be heard as well. Local historian Mark Jordan has written about the home and its grim past. He has also had his own experiences within its historic walls, including paranormal investigations. Of everyone who has spent time investigating the home, it's likely that Jordan has spent more time in the bedroom that was believed to be Celie's than anyone else. Today, the room is mostly used for storage, but Jordan reports the space gives him a little tingly-fingly, and his breath gets short when he's walking into static energy. One night, Jordan and a team of investigators split up between the house and the big house. They were communicating to each other through a pair of radios. Suddenly, a scream came over the radio. Both teams thought it was somebody from the other building, and they were relieved that none of their friends were hurt, but then realized it might have been something a bit more supernatural. Jordan recalled that it sounded like a woman's scream, and it was a very disturbing sound. There was another day when a friend of Jordan tried to take a photo in Celie's bedroom. The camera shuttered, though it wouldn't move, and the new battery had suddenly lost its entire charge. Within minutes, strange fog filled the valley outside of the home, sending the woman quickly back to her car. Once she returned to her motel, the camera was working fine. The battery was fully charged again. Jordan and his paranormal investigator colleagues are not the only ones who have had experiences at the home. Eric Heiss, a public information officer from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, was a skeptic when he first started at Marlborough Farm. But his first visit to the house changed his mind. He described sensations like static pulses running up his arm, a sensation of being touched by somebody he couldn't see. And now he's one of the biggest advocates for the farm's haunted tours, which are run on occasional special events. Even if you don't have a chance to get inside the Seeley one-time home, maybe you can catch a glimpse of Seeley peeking out the window of her room. Either way, you can still take in the history of the state park, remembering that chilling tales can often be found in the most beautiful of places.
So, I would like to point out real quick, Patrick, I always appreciate when you go and tag stuff in the chat. This time, justifiably so, a little bit of a mistake. Lafayette, Ohio from the first story. There are 2 Lafayette, Ohios. It threw me for a huge loop when I first started digging into this, because the first, if you just go and type in Lafayette, Ohio into like Google Maps or something, it's going to take you to the other one, which is about 90 miles away. So there are 2 Lafayette, Ohios.
Just to confuse everybody, especially the post office.
Yeah, I mean, they have their own, they have their different zip codes, of course. But, yeah, if you don't get the zip code right, oops, oh, no, not your bad. It took him,
he's like, wait, what? And then he finally asked me, I'm like, yeah, there's 2.
I wound up stumbling through my editing process
a bit
for a good 10-15 minutes, wondering what the heck I was missing when I was looking for the Red Brick Tavern in the wrong Lafayette, Ohio. So,
yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're only 90 miles apart from one another.
Yeah. But because Lafayette went to both places, they're both named that.
And actually, the one where the Red Brick Tavern is wasn't founded until after Lafayette's visit.
Oh, okay.
It's just that the family loved Lafayette so much that, or actually, it was one of the daughters in particular. One of the daughters of the family, Lafayette was her hero. And so when they moved there and they established this town, they named it after the daughter's hero, Lafayette. So, yep. This is one of those interesting little tidbits from history.
Jeopardy question, there you go.
Yeah, nobody's going to get that.
Make it a double Jeopardy.
Anyways, yeah. So we are going to next go to the city of Dayton. So, in the historic center, in the heart of the city of Dayton, stands a historic center of education, the Stivers School for the Arts. Established in 1908, the school is the only public school in the Dayton City School District that hosts grades 7 through 12. Every year, it is home to over 900 students focusing on fine arts. The school offers programs for creative writing, dance, band, and much more, but one thing missing from the curriculum is Paranormal 101. Though a long lingering spirit is making sure that the lesson is getting taught all the same. Despite being well renowned for its fine arts program, the Stivers School is also well known for a mysterious murder which occurred in the 1920s. The circumstances swirled around a teacher named Mary Tyler, who was allegedly involved with a senior student aide at the time of her death. She was found floating in the school's swimming pool in the basement, and in one hand she had a locket, and in the other hand a broken pointer. Local officials believed that her companion removed his photograph from the locket, and he was never seen again. The school eventually abandoned the pool, covering it over to be forgotten. But there is still a trap door there where it is believed that the spirit of Mary Tyler roams. She has been seen floating in the drained pool as if she never left. She is blamed for banging on pipes in the basement and wailing loudly as she wanders the tunnels beneath the school. The basement classroom that was built over the pool has had numerous unexplained occurrences, such as wildly changing temperatures and flickering lights. A former student recalled how the space was used as a photography classroom, and their class was the first to descend into the abandoned pool after it had been sealed up for several decades. Soon after the group entered the pool, bizarre activity seemed to pick up. They would hear water splashing behind them when they were printing pictures in the darkroom, and their film would turn out all splotchy no matter how careful they were. A friend of theirs brought a glow-in-the-dark Ouija board, and they used it in the darkroom. Surprisingly, it was not the teacher they talked with. Instead, it was to a young boy. Though no one has made contact with him since, the encounter was enough for them to give him the name John. Ever since then, any malevolent activity at Stivers has been pinned on John and his negative demeanor. As we always note at Haunts of Richmond, Haunts of Richmond does not endorse the use of Ouija boards.
Not even glow-in-the-dark ones.
Nope. Now, they think they encountered a young boy, but we would not be so sure. The activity in the classroom has continued in the years since, with the TV turning on and off by itself and doors opening and closing with no one nearby. No one knows what these wayward students actually let into the school when they broke out the Ouija board. I'm willing to bet that whatever they did not close their session properly. Because, yeah, they're not toys. Anyways, carrying on.
Stop stepping on your brother.
In a separate encounter, a quiet female student went to the restroom one day and came running back in a few minutes later, slammed the door, and started crying with fear. Apparently, she was standing in the hall when she heard footsteps. Then a man's voice whispered in her ear. The security tape showed a dark, foggy figure manifesting next to her. Could this have been John stretching his legs? As for Mary Tyler, she has also been seen walking the halls of the third floor corridor, her high-heeled shoes clicking on the floor. She is described as a woman in white or with long white hair. According to A.S. Mott, author of Haunted Schools, which was published in 2003, Mrs. Tyler's ghost has been seen once by a classroom full of students. The phantom could not speak as a result of water pouring from her mouth. Karen Lavin, who documented ghostly occurrences in her book in 2009, Dayton Ghosts, recalls her personal experience when she visited Stivers for research in 2008. She said, "Stivers gave off a distinctly weird vibe, and not only when I was looking down into the bowels of the old swimming pool where Mary was found dead, but throughout the school. It truly seems to have a very deep history of hauntings in its century of life, and at the same time, it is a hub for artistic creativity." So, not exactly a place you can go visit. It is a public school, so you can't just go and wander in there, but interesting place all the same.
Yeah, I wouldn't want the classroom that has the pool underneath it. Even though it's empty, it's still literally a floor on top of the open, empty pool. No, thank you. All right, so we're going over to Miamisburg, and this is Library Park. So when it comes to paranormal hotspot, a park in Miamisburg has long had the reputation as the prime spooky locale. In fact, Library Park has set a record for the most ghost sightings in one location in Ohio. We take that with a grain of salt, as official record keeping and paranormal encounters do not exactly go hand in hand. Still, with such a claim, could even be... Let's restart that. Still, that such a claim could even begin to be made does speak of the legacy of this location. Library Park got its start as a village cemetery. Originally at the edge of town, the cemetery gradually became much more central fixture as the growing city expanded around it. As the city grew, more people came to spend time in and around Village Cemetery, and by the 1800s, the sightings began. People reported seeing a ghostly figure of a woman roaming the cemetery grounds. Day after day, more and more people from the town reported seeing the same thing. People from all over came to Miamisburg to see this, gathering to witness the phenomena at 9 p.m. each evening. She was seen on such a regular basis for so long that people would have been more surprised if they didn't see her. Now, just as this creepy apparition drew fascination, it also drew equal shares of disdain and agitation. Many of the residents of Miamisburg were put off by the regular manifestation and the crowds that they drew, so a project was initiated to disinter the graves and move them to nearby Hill Grove Cemetery in hopes that the haunting would end. One by one, graves were moved down the road, yet the spirit continued to appear, night after night. Locals started to suspect that this haunting had less to do with the burials and more to do with the Bus family. Some even claim to recognize the apparition as the ghost of a buswoman who was murdered a few years prior. Moving her grave did not help matters. Residents were in an uproar. A newspaper article from the Frederick, Maryland Daily News on March 27th of 1884 stated, "Last night several hundred people armed with clubs and guns and assaulted the specter, which appeared to be a woman in white. Clubs, bullets, and shot tore through the air in which the mysterious figure floated without disconcerting in the least."
Imagine that. You can't kill something that's already dead.
The town turned out en masse today to begin exhuming all the bodies in the cemetery. After that night in 1884, all the remaining graves were uprooted and moved to Hillgrove Cemetery. But still, the haunting activities continued. For the next 100 years, people reported encounters with the spirit in what became Liberty Park. While sightings have tapered off, the legacy of the spirit remains strong. Today, Liberty Park is home to the Carnegie Center, which was built in 1910 as the Carnegie Library, giving the park its modern name. It's also accompanied by a Veterans Memorial and the Miamisburg History Center. It's a well-loved center and a community that hides a spooky chapter of Miamisburg's past in plain sight. Yeah, we all know what happens when you move bodies.
But it's not all that uncommon.
Nope.
There are so many old towns where they found that the cemetery that was at once upon a time on the outskirts of town
Is now in the middle of town.
Now in the middle of town as the city grows, and that's just inconvenient. So, yeah, not exactly a not a unique story in the sense of moving the cemetery. The reasoning for moving the cemetery, perhaps, is a little on the unique side.
I mean, we have a similar tale on our Shades and Spectres tour of a haunting that drew a massive amount of people that it caused an uproar, and something was demolished because of it.
They deemed it a public nuisance.
Yeah.
Yep.
Dude, your brother is under there.
That's just causing trouble.
Yeah, you need to stop.
But I always cause trouble.
You need to stop.
Trouble's my name.
Do you want under there with your brother?
Anyways, all right. We're going to go actually back to the city of Dayton. We're not quite done with Dayton yet. Where amidst the homes of the old North Dayton neighborhood stands a building that has survived over a century of changes and near disaster. Built in 1910 by Sig Keziopolsky as a general store and deli, the building at 1400 Valley Street now stands as the Amber Rose, an Eastern European restaurant that opened in 1990. When Eleanor Slouzis purchased the aging structure in 1989, the first thing she needed to do was restore and stabilize the place, as it had been previously damaged in a fire and its future was bleak. The restoration went well beyond just saving the structure, as its interior features beautiful stained glass, finely polished marble, and elegant wood finishes throughout. Eleanor chose the Amber Rose name for the amber jewels mined in Lithuania and Northern Europe, and rose symbolizing love and compassion. In 1998, owner Joe Castellano bought the restaurant and still uses Eleanor's recipes. It remains a beloved fixture of the neighborhood, but it is also home to some haunting secrets.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Glasses flying off of shelves, footsteps on the upper floors, lights turning on and off, and a little girl in a ruffled dress. The little girl is believed to be Chicky, the daughter of the building's original owner. Yes, that. Her first appearances were frightening for employees of the Amber Rose, as they first saw her peering from the attic window as they came and went from the building. Her long black hair and very out-of-place appearance was unsettling and raised questions about who she could be. The idea that it could be Chicky came from a chance meeting that Slouzis had with Rose Lasko, one of Sig Keziopolsky's daughters. Rose told Slusis that this description sounded like her sister Genevieve Chicky Kezigopolsky, who passed away in 1983 after leading a full life. Chicky loved her father's store as a child and spent much of her time in the attic. It seems she has decided to come back to this happy place after she passed away. Aside from making herself seen around the Amber Rose, Chicky can get up to a little mischief as well. In addition to the flying glassware and playing with the lights, she's also credited with strange laughter and sweet singing that is heard throughout the Amber Rose. Current owner Joe Castellano said that customers have reported seeing people in the bathroom mirror, but when they turned around, no one was there. He also recalled one Sunday when the restaurant was closed, the alarm went off. When Castellano arrived with the police to check it out, he found a brew basket from the iced tea maker in the middle of the floor. He said of the occurrence, maybe Chicky was lonely that Sunday and wanted some company.
Or some tea.
In a separate event, Castellano was sitting in the office at his desk when he heard the adding machine clicking away on the other desk, even though he was very much alone at the time. That is something that Castellano has experienced on a few different occasions. One of the restaurant cooks claimed to have his own encounter with Chicky. He says the little girl appeared right in front of him, lifted the ruffles of her dress just off the floor, and walked out of the room. When the cook told the manager about the encounter, they checked the security cameras, but there was no little girl to be seen. Instead, they saw a small, bright, white orb enter, circle, and leave the room at the same time the cook had his experience. After the experiences piled up, the Amber Rose opened their doors to a paranormal investigation team called Parasense. What they believed they encountered went beyond Chicky. The group captured a number of spooky photos and a variety of EVPs that hinted at other entities on the property. Who these spirits might be and why they linger at the property is a bit of a mystery. But if they are right, maybe we can take some comfort in the fact that Chicky might not be alone in the quiet hours at the Amber Rose.
All right, so we're going to stick to Dayton for the moment, and we're going to move to the center of downtown to the Victoria Theater, where there may be more to be seen than the performances on stage. Opening in 1866, the Victoria Theater's gray marble facade hints at the elegant interior that lies within. Though most of the structure has gone through extensive restoration due to a severe fire nearly burning the structure to the ground, the Opera House retains much of its charm from the past. The building is a true survivor, as in addition to the nearly fatal fire, the theater had endured another fire, the Great Dayton Flood of 1913, and almost being torn down in 1967. Each event has left a mark, and maybe these has helped to contribute to the haunting tales that linger here. Throughout its changes, 2 or possibly 3 guests of the paranormal kind have always been the mainstay with the theater. They have manifested themselves in a variety of ways in the 150 plus years of the theater's history. First in the building spirits may be that of an actress who mysteriously vanished one night right before she was about to take the stage. The stage manager went to find her, but she wasn't in her room. There was a guard at the bottom of the stairs that never saw her come down. The leading theory is that she was probably murdered and taken out, maybe, in a trunk. When she disappeared, she was wearing a taffeta dress scented with rose perfume. Stories of the employees hearing the rustling sounds of a dress and the sweet smell of perfume persist to this day. Employees affectionately have called her Vicky. The current theater manager, named Dalton, recalled a time when Miss Vicky got a little upset. When they did renovations in 1979, Miss Vicky maybe thought that they were tearing down her home. The workers kept talking about their tools would disappear again and again, and if you come here, they'll tell you all about Miss Vicky. Now, Miss Vicky isn't alone, as we've mentioned. In the 1950s, a man took his life by throwing himself upon a knife he had stuck to one of the theater seats. An apparition of his face has been seen on the curtain. In other events, people have been attacked in one of the private boxes. A woman reported being struck by an unseen presence there, and a man was slapped so hard on the face that by a female presence that it left a mark. This may be the ghost of a woman named Lucille, While Lucille did not die in the theater, she did suffer a traumatic event there during her life. Even as Lucille went on to live a full life, it seems that piece of her may have been trapped at the Victoria Theater after she passed. One of the more unfortunate tales tied to the beautiful and historic structure. Of course, if you're in Dayton and looking for some culture, history, architecture, and hauntings, this is probably the best place you want to check out. Question?
Just a second.
Chris was looking up a date.
I was. Alex asked about haunted restaurant recommendations. So I listed off a few that we have right here in Richmond, which Rosie's, Patrick Henry, Chenet, the restaurants at the Jefferson and Linden Row Inn.
Yep.
Those are a few right off the top of my head. They think something's at Helen's too, right?
Helen's and then what used to be the Continental.
Continental Divide.
Yeah.
Which I don't know what that is now, but that was infamously haunted.
Then there's Bar Louie and what's that steakhouse that...
Ruth Chris.
Ruth Chris, yeah.
Yep, down in just down south side there.
Yes.
Yep. So there's a bunch of them here in Richmond, and then we also did that whole episode of haunted restaurants, which was almost 3 years ago now. Yeah. It was March 1st of 2021.
And we also randomly hit restaurants in our other stories too.
Yep. One If by Land, Two If by Sea comes to mind. That's in New York City.
Yep.
That's the one that's made so famous by the Burrs.
But there's been other ones that we've talked about too throughout various stories. So
yeah.
There's a lot of them.
Quite a few of them. Alex got married at Linden Row. I didn't know that.
Ooh.
Linden Row is fantastic.
We enjoyed our stay there.
Yes, we definitely enjoyed our time there.
We need to go do another staycation.
Yes.
Oh no, don't make me go back to a historic location that's haunted and spend the night. Oh no.
Trying to see if there were any other questions right now. Oh, Mac! Hey, Mac!
Hey, Mac!
Mac recommended Rosie's right there.
Yeah. Mac loves Rosie's.
And we love Mac. Mac's actually one of our guides.
Yep. He will never leave.
Never leave.
Honorary, always.
Always at least honorary, and he's always welcome to come back if you're ever so inclined. Yes. So, but yes.
Or bring the babes to, let's start training them up.
Yeah.
Get the next generation.
Yeah, we got a few years. Okay, let's see.
Cincinnati time.
Yes, back on
track.
Yes. So, yes, to the southwest corner of Ohio, we arrive in Cincinnati. The city has a long heritage of hauntings, as the Cincinnati Commercial noted back on August 29th of 1875. But, nonetheless, we occasionally hear of some uncanny places, even in practical pork-packing Cincinnati, where the dead render the lives of the living a burden to them. Quite the quote.
That is.
Yes.
I'm trying to unpack that in my head.
It's a lot to unpack. I mean, it's definitely a mouthful for sure.
Yeah.
But it very much hints at the fact that, this is the dead's place. We're just here until we die too.
Yeah, I'm just the dead render the lives of the living a burden to them.
Yep.
That is loaded.
Yes, it is. Quite. So, we're not done with them. We're going to have a few more of their newspaper quotes. They definitely had a penchant for words in the 1870s there at the Cincinnati Commercial. So, anyways. Now, amongst such places was the Exposition Building Complex, the predecessor of the Cincinnati Music Hall. The buildings were demolished in 1876, but during their time, the Cincinnati Commercial noted, the site occupied by the buildings is none other than the old Potter's Field, which formerly extended west beyond the bed of the canal and which was abandoned to other uses about 35 years ago.
Okay, the fact that they knew where their Potter's Field was is nice.
Yeah. So, but then they went ahead and plowed right over it anyways. Yeah. But yes. Now, when the canal was cut through this soil, enriched with human remains and sown with human bones, about 100 skeletons had to be removed and committed to the already overcrowded place of nameless graves, now covered by the buildings. We're already...
And you're wondering why you're haunted?
Oh, we're just getting started. We're just getting warmed up. This story just had my jaw on the floor. Anyways, carrying on. But but wait, there's more. There was another more grisly source of human remains in the old potter's field, according to the commercial from 1838, when the steamer Moselle exploded her boilers above the site of the present waterworks and blew the skulls and limbs and blackened trunks of her passengers all over the city, so that falling bodies fell through the roofs of houses. The remains of the victims were gathered together and buried in a spot now covered by the south end of the horticultural hall. Yeah. The Moselle, a steamboat built at Cincinnati, was among the largest and fastest boats of her era. On April 25th of 1838, the Moselle left Cincinnati for St. Louis with 250 to 300 passengers on board. The boat's boilers exploded and everything forward of the paddle wheels shattered into splinters. More than 150 passengers and crew died. Even in 1875, any excavation at the exposition buildings turned up skeletal remains. An elevator shaft sunk into the power hall required the removal of more than a barrel full of skulls and bones, which were placed under the floor in another portion of the building. The commercial noted that in addition to the potter's field, the site of the exposition buildings had also served as an orphan asylum and a Civil War military hospital. All on this one site.
I'm never going to this site, by the way.
Yeah.
That's just, that screams bad juju.
Not a foot of ground lies under the exposition building unoccupied by moldering bones. Human bones which the ringed worms have long since tired of gnawing. It was, of course, natural enough that the ghosts disinterred from the bed of the canal and the ghosts claiming kinship with the bones disinterred to make room for the elevator should cease to rest. The exposition buildings weren't very old at all in 1875, maybe 5 years in operation, but the commercial described the vast wooden structures as dingy, gloomy, and grotesque, foretelling their eventual demolition in 1876 to make way for the new music hall. A night watchman was only too happy to give the commercial reporter an earful about paranormal mischief. The weirdest and strangest noises would occur at intervals all night. Rappings on the ceiling, under the floor, on the doors and windows, the sound of stealthy footfalls behind me, or of loud tramping before me, the crash of heavy timbers thrown from the ceiling, of glass dashed upon the floor, of heavy bodies being dragged over the planking. These never ceased except during exposition time. The watchman reported loud knocking on the front doors one snowy night. When he opened the doors, no one was there, and there were no footprints in the freshly fallen snow. He never saw any ghosts, but he felt them frequently. He said, "They never touch me, but I always know when they are around. By an icy chill, a thrill as of electricity, a feeling like what the French call peau de poulet, goose flesh. They never annoy me now by mere knocking and rapping, for I have got used to it. So used to it that sometimes when people have really knocked at the door, I didn't open it because I thought it was only the dead that kept knocking, knocking, knocking." The watchman reported something in the main hall that sounded like a man marching and dragging a musket across the wooden floor. A medium witnessed it as well and claimed it was a soldier, perhaps one who died in the military hospital. When the exposition buildings did fall in 1876 to accommodate the new music hall, it was done with haste. In 1978, architect George Roth wrote an essay for the book Cincinnati's Music Hall. He noted, the construction of Music Hall was fast-tracked. Before the drawings were off the drafting board, demolition of the old hall, which was what they also called the exposition hall, a clearing of the site, which unearthed numerous graves requiring reinterment in Spring Grove Cemetery, and the excavation work was started. This was in October of 1876. So they were basically clearing the site before the plans were even finished for the new place. They were done. Although many skeletons were moved to Spring Grove, not all were. Excavations in 1927 uncovered 3 coffins which were reburied in the basement. Another 1927 expansion uncovered 65 graves, earning that side of the music hall the nickname the Valley of Death. Those remains were also reburied on site. In May of 1998, another elevator shaft uncovered 207 pounds of bones encased in concrete. These bones ended up in an anthropological study at the University of Cincinnati. It should come as no surprise that the hauntings continued in the music hall after the exhibition buildings fell. Longtime employees of organizations based in music hall testified to being in the presence of ghosts. The late Cincinnati Pops music director Eric Kunzel, who spent many nights at music hall working on programs and arrangements, believed that they were basically quite friendly. He recalled, "They are definitely in this building, some sort of spirits. If anybody thinks I'm nuts, come here at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. You'll see." Cincinnati Opera CEO and General Director Patricia Beggs spent many nights at Music Hall during opera season and says she too felt their presence. She related an experience a fellow opera employee had in the 1990s. "One of our employees came down here one day during our season when we were dark, and he brought his little 3-year-old son Charlie with him.
Oh boy.
They went out on stage, and Charlie was enjoying pretending like he was performing, and all of a sudden he looked over and said, 'Daddy, who's that man in the box?' That was the box of Jesus Lopez Cabos, which was box number 9. He was at that point in time the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra music director. And his father, Tom, said, 'Well, there's nobody in the box, Charlie.' 'Yes, there is. He's waving at me right now.' And so, with that, they packed up and left very quickly. Then there is Terry Kidney, who worked at Music Hall for over 20 years. Because the ghostly experiences she heard about have been happy, she thinks the spirits that inhabit Music Hall are perhaps people who had at one time attended events there and had a good time. She said, 'One of our box office people was working at the window and there was a ding outside,' the bell indicating someone at the window, and there was nobody there. The buzzer kept going off, so he finally left the box office and went outside and didn't see anybody. He went back in, and it kept dinging, so he went back out again. At one point, he was back in the box office, and he felt a tug on his shirt sleeve. He looked down, and there was a little boy in period dress that had knickers on, a little cap that was tugging on him." Over the years, these stories and many more have been collected by the Society for the Preservation of Music Hall. We're happy to say that they offer ghost tours of the building to help maintain the building, share its hauntings, and recall the long, tumultuous, and sometimes grim history of the site that Music Hall calls home today. So, a couple more stories. We're running a long time.
Okay. All right, so we mentioned we would not be stopping with one Lafayette story. No, we got 2. So this one is the Hotel Lafayette in Moretta. Now, the location is, of course, important historically to Ohio, as in 1788, it was the first permanent settlement of the newly formed United States in what would become the state of Ohio. Here we have a hotel whose name, of course, marks the notable chapter in Moretta's history. The Lafayette Hotel draws its name from the gentleman who visited, the Marquis de Lafayette, French hero of the American Revolution. He showed up in 1825. A plaque near the hotel marks the spot where Lafayette came ashore in the Moretta, and of course the locals like to boast that the first tourists to visit Moretto was, of course, the Marquis de Lafayette. Now, it isn't to say that the hotel was there when Lafayette visited. In fact, the first hotel to grace the site of the Lafayette Hotel was the Bellevue Hotel, built in 1892. It was 4 stories tall. It had 55 steam-heated rooms, a bar, a cowbell system in every room, and it, as advertised, hot and cold baths, all for $2 to $3 a night. Oh, how times have changed. The Bellevue was destroyed by fire on April 26 of 1916. A picture of the fire is actually on display in the gunroom restaurant. After the fire, the hotel was rebuilt and reopened on July 1st of 1918. And it was this time that it was named the Lafayette Hotel. The hotel's general manager, Sheila Rhodes, says of the hotel, "When you run a historic hotel, you want to update it, yet you want to keep the historical features. And that's where you have a very fine line of what you can change and what you don't. We've always tried to remodel it, but keep the charisma, keep the character, as the hotel had always had. Just so happens that the character may come with some spirited characters from generations past. The hotel's 3rd floor is said to be very haunted, and many of the guests have recounted paranormal experiences to Rhodes over the years. Some of the guests have encountered a woman in Victorian-style clothing, most certainly looking like a spirit from another era. Some other odd but generally harmless and inexplicable events include a sandwich going missing, only to reappear the next morning on the coffee table. Another guest left their hotel room door open just a crack to get ice down the hallway, and when returned, the door was shut. The same patron was in the shower when the shower went ice cold for a moment. And while those last couple of items might have some very normal explanations, we'll let the guy think that the hotel ghost might have been, trying to send him a message. Then there's the upended suitcases, the inexplicably emptied shampoo bottles, and a variety of other mischief that is spirited, shall we say. Rhodes says she's never had anyone report anything scary happening. Most of the supernatural reports are innocent or funny. She says talking with guests, some say that they've experienced something. It's usually on the 3rd floor. A lot of people think it's Mr. Hogue still kind of watching over his hotel, making sure that things are as they should be. The Hogue family were the first owners of the Lafayette Hotel, by the way. Now, those interested in experiencing the Lafayette Hotel for themselves can book a room or visit in Hidden Meridia, which offers tours throughout its historic town.
Marietta,
I'm sorry.
Meridia. Were you calling Meridia?
I was.
It's Marietta.
My
Marietta.
bad.
Sorry. I was typing. But anyways, Marietta. It's actually not that far from here. It's like right on the West Virginia border. So one of the first places you could get to is driving to Ohio from here. Anyways.
Noted. 3rd floor.
3rd floor. Excuse me.
I'm sorry. I've been trying to get comfortable with the cat.
So, everybody finally calm down a little bit? Okay. One more story for tonight. This time we are going to visit the village of Doylestown, just to the south of Cleveland. This small community harbors a sinister supernatural secret that is whispered about by the locals but is otherwise little known to the outside world. Rogues Hollow is kind of Ohio's version of Sleepy Hollow, but most Ohioans don't even know it exists. On the southern outskirts of Doylestown, Rogues Hollow hosts tales of a haunted mill, a crybaby bridge, a headless horseman, and more. By day, it is a lovely nature preserve and historical park, but by night, well, you might want to keep your distance. Like many rural areas and small towns in Ohio, Rogues Hollow was once a thriving coal mining village, but with a bit of a notorious side as well. Outlaws and gangsters used the hollow as a hideout, and shootouts and robberies were common here. These continued until the early 20th century. Today, very few remnants of the coal mining town remain, but some items have been preserved or restored over the years. For example, Chidester's Mill was once mysteriously burned to the ground, but it's been fully restored. Today, it houses a museum where you can learn all about the history of the area. but the area takes on a whole other atmosphere once the sun goes down. Even local historians and residents believe in many of the ghostly tales surrounding the Hollow. Russell Frey's self-published history of the town describes the Hollow at night. He writes, "Ghosts are best seen in the Hollow on a moonlit night when there are large, fleecy clouds overhead. Then the Hollow fairly comes alive with the residents of the spirit world, those who had a hand in making Rogues Hollow a wild and dangerous place scores of years ago. It's said that you can see more as twilight turns to pitch blackness of the night. Then you can see nooks and crannies with shadowy forms on the move." That said, there are many skeptics as well. They claim that the bizarre ghost stories surrounding Rogues Hollow were made up to keep people away from a corrupt town. Still, the stories remain, and instead of curtailing visitors, they have drawn paranormal enthusiasts of all stripes. One story surrounding the mill is that it is haunted by a member of the Chichester family who spitefully burned the original mill down rather than let it be sold out of the family. Another claims that the spirit of a worker who died at the mill after falling into the machinery is who lingers on here, perhaps unaware of his sudden ending. The Crybaby Bridge is one of many such bridges across the state of Ohio. In fact, author and paranormal researcher Brandon Mazzullo has uncovered at least 30 such reported bridges in the state. Side note, Brandon is a great guy, and we recommend looking him up if you haven't met him already. He actually has appeared at the last couple of the Hanover Tavern Paracons. So
and he wants to be at the next one.
Yep.
So.
Yep. So he's a great guy. Has been coming in from Ohio for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. Strongly recommend looking him up. A couple of great books out there too. Yep. So, anyways, back to Rogues Hollow. Now, in the case of Rogues Hollow, the story is a familiar one that revolves around an unassuming bridge. It's said that a woman took her unwanted child to the bridge and threw them over the edge. The cries of the child can still be heard to this day. The woman, remorseful of her actions, has also been reported in the area, perhaps cursed to linger here as a result of her unthinkable action. A different and slightly less sinister twist on the story is that a family was driving on the bridge and crashed, killing all but the baby in the vehicle. Unfortunately for the child, they succumbed to the elements before they could be found. Neither has a happy ending by any stretch, but at least the second one wasn't exactly intentional. But theory of the crybaby bridges, you can find all over Ohio.
Yeah.
It's a thing there.
It's all over the U.S. too.
Yes. But Ohio has a particularly high concentration.
Yes.
So, anyways, as for the Headless Horseman, the Rogues Hollow version of this story takes on a notable twist from the Sleepy Hollow version. In Rogues Hollow, it is said that on a cold and icy winter night, a man was riding his horse at breakneck speed through the hollow when a low-hanging, ice-laden branch caught the horse across the neck, nearly taking its head entirely off. The headless horse is sometimes seen galloping through the hollow with not a man on his back, but some sort of devilish imp creature instead. A headless horse, men, indeed. Tales from Rogues Hollow go on, but we'll hold off at one more for this evening, this one tied to the town's coal mining past. The ghosts of coal miners who died from the mines caving in and causing them to suffocate still allegedly haunt the area. They were industrious and their work was never complete. The entrance to the mines have been permanently sealed shut, but the sounds of tools picking away can still be heard echoing through the empty mines. And the walkways near the mine shafts are equally plagued by miners who never wanted to leave a job unfinished. So keep an ear out for the clanging of picks and shovels as you wander the paths of Rogues Hollow. Today you can visit the Chichester Mill Museum and the Chippewa Rogues Hollow Historical Society from June to September. Every October, the Historical Society hosts a Walk the Hollow event where you can hear the spooky tales surrounding the hollow and explore the area at night. One final side note for this evening, a friend of ours, Lori, at Black Cat Tales and Tours out of Canton, Ohio, runs a blog called The Phantom Memorandum, and we strongly recommend checking it out. She has had the chance to take the Rogues Hollow spooky tour and did a little write-up on it. You can also check out her spooky tours of Canton and Akron. So, with that, that draws us to a close for this evening. So, But yes. Yeah, we ran long tonight.
We did.
We
Yeah.
went.
We also had to do a little bit of...
We chattered a little bit.
Yes, while we were getting drinks.
Getting drinks and...
Settling cats down.
Settling cats down to a point. But, anyways, that is it for tonight. I don't remember. What are we doing in 2 weeks? Let's see. 2 weeks.
It's another state, I can tell you that much.
Let's see. South Carolina.
Yes.
On March 11th.
And then on the 25th, we're doing Haunted Virginia. We're actually doing our home state.
Yep.
Because
not necessarily Richmond. Maybe some spots around Richmond.
I don't think I put any in Richmond in there.
I mean, there are tour stories.
Yes.
We want to talk about other stuff
yes.
on this shows because we can. Because it's what we want to do.
Yes.
Yeah. But anyways, thank you all again so much for watching. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, religious conflicts, all of that good stuff, go ahead, drop it in the chat. Happy to hear from you. Drop us a note anytime, and we also hope that you can, of course, check in with us sometime. Come on out on a tour.
Come see us at
GalaxyCon, which actually will be immediately after the next episode.
Yes.
So we still have one episode before GalaxyCon. But yeah, come on out, check us out. Be happy to see you. And yes, Alex, thank you for sharing our friend Lori's blog there, the Phantom Memorandum. She does some really good write-ups.
She does. She works for the airlines by day, so she gets to travel around a lot, which is why she does the blog. But also runs the ghost tour as well. Yep.
But yeah, and that's Black Cat Tales tours. And she does them in both Canton, Ohio and Akron, Ohio.
Yep.
So, but with that, we will go ahead. We will bid you adieu for this evening. But thank you again for watching, and y'all have a good and spooky night.
Yes.
Good night, y'all.
I'm sorry.